This blueberry plant that I'm going to prune today is about 5 or 6 years old, but was neglected for several years. And last year was the first year that I gave it a good pruning, and I removed about 20% of the growth on it, old growth and low growth. And this year I'm going to remove another 20%, and I want to walk you through that today and show you what I'm going to do. But before I start, I want to show you a couple components of the plant so you understand some terminology. One thing I want to show you is that blueberry plants have two types of branching growth. One is whips, which are these straight stems that come out of the ground, and they eventually grow and develop and produce laterals, and the laterals are where the fruit is born on the plant. And I want to show you one of the fruit-bearing laterals. This one right here. You'll notice that the fruit buds are at the end, these big fat buds at the end of the stem. We're late in the dormancy season, so they've actually started to break dormancy a little bit, so you can see them very clearly. And further down the stem are vegetative buds which produce leaves. Both are important to the health of the plant, and I want to show you those today, a little bit about that. So with that, I also want to show you the tools that I use. So for large stems, I would use a lopper. If they're, say, over a ½ inch or maybe up to an inch or so, I'd use a loppers. Or for smaller things, less than a ½ inch, I just use a pruning shears. And today, all the wood that I'm going to cut off of this plant is fairly small, so I'm going to use a pruning shears. So the first thing I do is remove what we can call the low-hanging fruit, things that clearly need to be removed. And those things include dead wood, small whips, and low branches. So let's take a look at that and remove some of those right now. So down here you can see this branch is dead, it's a dark brown. I'm going to remove that branch. And there's another one over here that I'm going to remove, and a couple of small ones up here. So just go through and remove those things, and there aren't too many of them, so I'm going to move on and remove low branches. And the reason to remove low branches is it's hard to pick fruit when it's close to the ground. And it also, those branches get shaded by the taller branches and aren't as productive. So I'm going to come in here and remove these small branches that are growing close to the ground. There's that one. And that one. Oops. Tough to cut. There we go. And this one, and this one, and I think this one, and I think I'll remove this one. And the last thing I want to remove are small whips. Now, when the plants regenerate after you've pruned them, they'll produce whips that grow up from the roots or from the bottom of the stems. And so I want to remove the weakest ones, and usually you remove ones that are smaller than the size of a pencil. So there aren't too many of them here on this plant, so there's just a couple to remove. I'm going to remove these two small ones down here, and this one actually got cut off earlier. So there we go. So now I'm going to make some major cuts here to kind of open the plant up. And I'm going to do that. There's some older growth on here that's not as productive as some of the younger growth. The berries are produced on 1-year-old wood. So I'm going to get rid of some of these older pieces of wood that also are denser in the center of the plant. And so I kind of want to open up the plant a little bit to let more light in. So I'm going to make a couple cuts. I want to show you this branch right here. This stem, I'm going to take this stem out. You can see that there's not much productive wood, and the tips of the branch are kind of dying back anyway. So I'm going to come all the way to the bottom, making sure I have the right branch. And I'm going to cut that off close to the ground, like so. And one thing by pruning, it's going to stimulate the growth of the plant. So later this year, there will probably be a whip that forms at the base of that cut. And finally, there's one other sort of unproductive piece of wood in here that I want to cut out. And it has it's an older piece of wood, and eventually maybe in a year or two I'll probably take out the whole piece, but right now there's a fairly productive branch here, but there's some other branches that aren't as productive, and I'm just going to cut it right here. And that, by doing that, it really opens up the plant. And so I probably cut my 20% at this point. There were 6 or 7 main branches, and I've cut off one complete branch, and I've cut off probably half of another one, plus a lot of small wood. And I've actually put it over here on a tarp so you can see how much was cut off. And that's probably about 20% of the plant if you look back over here at the plant as it's now pruned. So with that, your plant is ready for the growing season, and you're ready to harvest blueberries later in the year.